Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 27, overall 302 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, which is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210, or email them at info@barrycullen.com. Live with CDP Sports Talk is weeknights at 8 o'clock on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Atlanta, Georgia. And I want to say thank you to my guests tonight coming on. My guests are Linda Crockett and Barb Vetter. And Linda is the founder of the Canadian Institute of Workplace Bullying Resources, which she founded and started up in 2011. And she's out of Edmonton, Alberta. And just bear with me, and I'm going to bring on Linda and Barb. Good afternoon, ladies. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Very good, thanks for having us.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciate it. How are you guys both out of Alberta?
No, I'm from Ottawa, Canada, but
okay.
Ottawa,
and Linda, you're from Edmonton, right?
That's right, Edmonton, Alberta.
How are things out in Ottawa and Edmonton right now?
Go ahead, Barbara.
Our temperature is lovely, having a great summer. We're impacted for a while by the forest fires, but that's hopefully past us now, so we're good.
And we were impacted by the fires too, but we've been getting some really good rain coming down, thank goodness, because that's cleared up some of the air. So
I was gonna say this was one of the worst ones yet, haven't we had? That we've had.
It is.
Definitely. So hopefully things get better. But hey, I want to say thank you so much, Linda and Barb, for coming on today. And I really look forward to talking to you today as well. And I guess the first question I was going to ask you, Linda, and then we'll go with you, Barb, is can you just tell my audience here in Ontario just a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. My first career was in social work, and then I started to become a trauma therapist. But my area of specialty is workplace bullying, otherwise known as psychological harassment or psychological violence. I see that on a spectrum, and I started this company about 12 years ago to help people who are suffering in the workplace, and expanded it to help leaders and help organizations work in the legislation area as well. So pretty much we're a trauma-informed resource for anyone that's impacted or anyone that wants to prevent the injury or intervene, and whether it's early stages or crisis level, and also covering repair and recovery. So pretty much holistic trauma-informed lens on this issue for all Canadians.
Go ahead, Barb. Okay, Barb? I'm not sure if she can hear us or not.
Good. I can hear you perfectly. Thank you. I'm an MSW, started my career over probably 30 years ago. So I've been doing this for a long time. Worked in the area of clinical delivery, clinical best practice, design, and research. So I worked almost for 28 years in the same organization. It wasn't the same organization. I always say I stayed in the same office, but it kept changing. So I worked there for 28 years and I left in January. And since then, I've been working on just doing some project work. And my primary project is really getting to support a fundraiser, the one that we're here to talk about today. So I'm really in a very different stage of my life where I'm just getting to do what I want and to have passion projects. So that's who I am.
I can relate to that, Barb. I'm 51 years old, and I've been working on a new career into radio the last 3.5 years. And I just love doing my podcast show. It's now on a radio station in Georgia. And I'm also trying to do as much as I can in the media industry. And I've met so many wonderful people and connections from doing this show. And what I love about this show is the storytelling aspect from my guests and learning from my guests as well.
Excellent.
Linda, I wanted to ask you this question. How did you come about founding the Canadian Institute of Workplace Bullying Resources in 2011? And what were some of the challenges? I can speak. What were some of the challenges of starting up your own business back then?
So, when I went through this, that's what started it. So, when I went through it, I had been in social work for 22 years. I had a bachelor's degree and I worked in all kinds of abuse. I was an investigator. I supervised and trained investigators. I knew what abuse was. I worked in addictions, domestic violence, sexual abuse. I knew what abuse was, and I certainly knew the systems that we walk people through in order to help them with the abuse, so I was very familiar with the signs of abuse, but nobody ever talked about workplace bullying. Nobody trained us on workplace bullying. There was no language for us, and it was so normalized that it happened in front of us all the time, and we never said anything. So when I went through it, I really hit rock bottom. I was working in a cancer center, and I was bullied by a psychologist, an HR, a pastor, a social worker, and an admin manager. So these are the professions that we would never expect to be bullied by, or an environment we would never expect to be bullied in. So I wasn't watching my back. I was just wanting to be there to help patients who were diagnosed with cancer through treatment and recovery, or through treatment and possibly through death and afterwards, the families. I loved my job. And so when I went through it, I struggled for a couple of years with a lot of abuse, and I wasn't the only one. And when I got so sick, I ended up in isolation because I was very ashamed of being targeted. I thought, how could this happen to me with the knowledge that I have? And I'm supposed to be able to know human behaviors and all this, be a good communicator, but yet I missed it. So I felt very ashamed, and I went into hiding for a long time and became very, very ill. As I mentioned, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I had some physical issues as well that have remained permanent. So if you keep staying and you keep trying harder, it only gets worse. And that's a message I hope people will get out there. You can't fix it. If you got a target on your back, you need some help. So when I realized I just decided being quiet and isolating is actually feeding them, the toxic ones. And I need to do the opposite. I need to talk about it. I need to get loud about it. And as I say over a few times, I haven't shut up since, and I'm not going to shut up for a few years yet. And I find many platforms to talk on this level and build awareness, even internationally. So I started really to answer your question, Chris, because I went through it. And when I realized that there was no resources in Canada, I knew that this was going to be something that in years people would catch up to. The world people would start talking about it. Legislation will come. I didn't think it would happen in my lifetime, to be very honest with you. So I'm very impressed that it's here. It's still weak. It needs a lot of help. But I also was very motivated by the fact that with my education, I missed it. What about people who don't speak English as a first language? What about people who don't have my education? How are they going to survive? Because I barely made it. I was on that suicidal ideation pathway. I made it based on the fact that I had some resources. What about those who don't? And I also thought about my children and my grandchildren. I know they're getting bullied at school. I don't want them bullied at work. All of that drove me to get to where I am today.
Linda, I wanted to ask you this as well. I have a story to share as well, and I'd like to hear from Barbara too. But do you find bullying and harassing is more prevalent now than it was back in this. I was born in 72. So do you find there's more of it now than there was back in the 70s and 80s or even the 90s?
I've got a couple of answers for that, and I'm sure Barb could add to it. So,
Yes.
you know, in my opinion, over the decades, the tactics have changed. And because of this internet, right? I call the internet an abyss of weaponry if somebody wants to hurt somebody. And there's all kinds of ways for that to happen now. So as we get more intelligent as a society, so do our tactics, and they get more sophisticated, and therefore the injuries get worse. That's one part of my answer. The second part of my answer is that I saw a change when the Me Too movement came out, and that opened up a few doors to people in shame to talk. At the same time, we were lobbying for legislation. We got it in Alberta, and a lot of organizations were starting to get exposed. So people were starting to talk about it. So with more people talking about it, legislation in place, more people getting exposed, awareness is getting bigger, and you're just hearing more about it. The people who've been silent we're coming out of the closet. We're now talking about it. And there's horror stories out there, horrible, torturous stories that people have yet to hear yet. Nothing shocks me anymore, but things still bring me to tears because it's so awful. But nothing shocks me anymore, where it's happening and who it's happening to and who's doing it. None of that shocks me anymore. But I think, as I said, with our internet and growing awareness and legislation, yeah, you're hearing more.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, so I don't really have much more to add other than, awareness and sharing stories brings forward more and more. So I would just say that when I, at a very high level, say, hey, I resigned, I worked on an issue, I worked hard to resolve it, and people have some awareness, they say very quickly, oh, I had that problem too. That's the part that I find almost, Linda says, tsunami level. It is an avalanche. The numbers of people that sort of line up and say, and they're not people I know well, they're people I might talk to very casually. I'm just mentioning it in passing at a very high level, no details. People come forward with these stories all the time, just making yourself open to that. And, it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's shocking at the same time. It's not good amazing. It's not what you want. But there's now more awareness and more appreciation that it actually is being normalized as something they experience. I think what happens for people often is they lose their self-esteem and their gauge on what is normal. And so you start to swallow things thinking, did I read that right? Do I understand what just happened? And only when you sort of step away and get an independent voice saying, hey, that was not okay, that you sort of realize. And I think that type of conversation happens more and more in my world. So that's what I would add.
In all of our worlds, Barb, because this is a very common experience. And I just had a client like that who just needed a sanity check, because there's a lot of mind games involved here.
Oh, yes.
And those mind games get into your emotional side of your brain. And when it's in the emotional side of your brain, you can't see clearly. And you start to go into that place of self-doubt and questioning, did I hear that? Did I see that? Should I feel this? And when nobody in your environment is validating you, then you even go into a deeper place of self-doubt. So sometimes you just need to be pulled aside, just like Barb said, reach out and get a sanity check, because you can't quite trust your brain when it's in full confusion and shock and disbelief and even trauma.
Absolutely. Sorry, go ahead, Barbara. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say there's another layer of complexity here. And I would just add in that often when someone is going through workplace bullying and harassment, it is being witnessed by people all the time. And so as much as you think no one's noticing, people come up to you and they say, are you okay? That happened to me. And so you might think, hey, this is just me, but all of a sudden the conversation in your workplace starts to shift and people are leaning in to provide you support, and they're sharing their own personal experience. And then you realize it's not just me. And that's good for normalizing, but it also is a message it tells you that there's a lot of people standing by and are fearful. They're fearful of how do they keep their job? Because there's many aspects of their job they loved. Linda, you said, I loved my job. I did not leave.
Yeah.
I loved my job too. I loved the people I worked with, and I was proud of the work I did. It was the last thing I wanted to do was resign. That's the decision that people have to make often in trying
my case.
Real.
To save their lives. Yeah. They have to leave to save their lives because there's no other way. They say they're going to get so sick they're going to either take their life or die of a heart attack. But I just want to say, hold on. I just going to say to Barb, she was very, very lucky that some people did come up to her and say, hey, I saw that. I have a lot of clients that nobody comes up to, and they're left on their own. Like they feel very betrayed, and it's kind of called betrayal blindness. And it's just, there's a lot of reasons, a lot of valid reasons why people don't come forward and say, hey, I saw that, because they're scared. They see that it doesn't work. Coming forward doesn't, you end up getting retaliated against, or, they're at risk of losing their job. So I could say a lot more about that, but I can tell you've got something important to say, Chris.
I was gonna say, I left my former employer a year ago. I can't go into the details, but I am so much. I did like the job, but the environment was toxic. And to be honest, the last year I've been a happier person. My stress levels come down, and I don't miss it at all. But one thing I wanted to ask both of you ladies is, if companies are really serious about cleaning up their culturals and workplace safety and stuff like that, it all starts with the top, especially with human resources as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start this one, Linda, and then you can add in. And I would say, I worked in an industry where I worked very closely with with HR in the EAP industry. That was most of my career was spent in that industry. And I think HR wants to do a good job. Are they using the right strategies? Do they have the right policies? Are they doing the right type of education? I think there's a lot of work to be done here. I think, just as, in my industry, in the industry I came from, there was a recognition of 35 years ago that people needed privacy to deal with their personal mental health issues. And HR lifted that out and said, we don't want to know about your private issues. You go seek help privately. All we need is the strategic information so that we can inform the organization at a strategic level. So there was what I used to always refer to as the firewall. I think governance needs to consider that at the highest level, because if the policy escalates to HR, inherently there is a conflict of interest, because HR has the obligation there is to protect the organization. And that has a bias in it naturally. I don't think HR wants to do a bad job. I don't think they're using the right tools. And I think they need way different strategies and way more.
Okay, we just lost Barb there, but she'll come back. I'm not worried about. Linda, did you want to talk for a minute or two while Barb, hopefully we'll get her back on?
Yeah, I'll fill in I think where she was going. I 100% agree with Barb. HR, there's some really great HR out there that are getting bullied too. That is a fact. I'm hearing those stories. And then there's some HR that are bullying others and misusing their power. Fact. I'm hearing those stories. And then there's some that are stuck in the middle, but they need a paycheck too. What I see and what complements what Barbara has said is they need to be trauma informed. And if they're trauma informed, to understand that there's the slightest risk of bias, they should not be involved in the investigation. They should be stepping back, and they should be getting a third-party investigator. And that third-party investigator should be trauma informed. We are talking about psychological harassment, psychological violence, psychological hazards, psychological injuries. That means there's a psychological component. So if you're a leader or an HR, an investigator, a mediator, a coach, or a therapist, you need trauma-informed training to deal with this, or you're placing people at risk of being harmed by your mistakes. You don't have to be a therapist, but you have to have some trauma-informed training, and that's what's lacking out there.
Since you started up your business 12 years ago, do you find it has gotten better in Canada, or is there still a lot of work needed to be done, especially with bigger companies?
I'm really proud that Canada has legislation provincially and federally, and I know the Northwest Territories is working on it. I'm really proud we have some language all over Canada, but we will always need to do more. We don't really clearly define psychological harassment. We clearly define harassment, but that's two different things. So we need some work there, but we're still ahead of many other countries. Are we doing better? No, there's a lot of employers that are great. And I am having a lot more larger organizations knock on my door and ask for the training, and that's great to see. So I see an improvement, but there's a lot more work to be done. We've got a long way to go yet. And I hope we can continue to be a leader. Canada can be a leader in this area. Every employer in Canada needs to get the message. This is not going away, and change is happening. And you need to decide, as a leader an owner of a business, what side of that change do you want to be on? Do you want to be exposed for harassment, sexual harassment, or bullying, or do you want to be on this side known for promoting psychological safety?
Welcome back, Barb. Barb,
sorry about that.
No worries. I'm glad you're back. And would you like to add into that as well?
I'll wait till the next question and make sure I'm aligned to the conversation. So thank you, Chris. I missed a little bit, so I'll catch up.
One thing I wanted to add too, and I experienced this with my former career as well. The belittling part too, coming from management, and to me, that's a form of harassment as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say that and this may have already come up, but the key to me is education. And what became very clear as I went through trying to resolve my own issue was that the organization, and I worked for a behavioral health organization, and if you read me in LinkedIn, you'll see I was the chief clinician. I was the most senior clinical person in my organization, and I had to work hard to resolve my issues. And what became clear to me is that the education and the vernacular to manage my issue needed to be really changed. I mean, as I went through my issue, I was told this is an interpersonal issue. You're not adjusting to change. You're too emotional. You're too sensitive. And there was lots of language that really minimized what was going on. And I was really told by many colleagues, peers, if we take action, this is career suicide. Now, imagine that, when you're at a different stage in your career, knowing that you're about to ruin your career. That is and no HR leader, no progressive company wants that in their culture. But that's the fear. That's the fear.
That's a really good example, Barb. And as a person who's a target, watching this train wreck coming, you see the train wreck, it's going to come and ruin your career, ruin your reputation, all this 10, 15, 20 years of hard work. And everybody around you is saying, I don't see it. You shouldn't feel it. You're overreacting. Stay under the radar. Don't be so sensitive. That's just more crazy making and more betrayal. And the injury of this kind of abuse is a trauma of betrayal. So.
Absolutely. And I can relate. It's a different career in a different company, but I can kind of relate to this as well. And also people don't realize this too. When you're done work, people who are going through this bring it home with them, and it affects their home life as well. And it just shows you how much of an impact this can have on your life, not just at work, but outside of work as well.
You're absolutely right, because a lot of us get really stuck in ruminating thought about what happened and is this going to happen tomorrow and how do I get out of this? I just want to do my job. And I've had one client who, while driving home, was so caught up in thought she crossed over the solid line on the highway, and what kind of disaster that could have happened. And, families, the husbands and wives, they're staying up till 3 a.m. with that person that can't sleep, or they're stressed out worrying about their spouse, watching their physical and psychological health decline. And children are noticing mom or dad are not the same. Mom or dad are isolating now. They're not joining our family celebrations. So it is impacting the whole family. Absolutely.
And I can relate to with having anxiety or affecting my sleep, which affected my weight as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Barb, did you want to add anything before we go on to the next question?
I say go on to the next question. There's lots to talk about.
Absolutely. We could talk for hours and hours about this subject. But my next question for both of you ladies is can you just tell my audience, tell my audience about workplace psychological harassment and what are some signs of it?
Which one do you want us to respond?
Who would like to go first?
Go ahead, Linda, and I'll add in. You go ahead.
So the legislation that you'll see when you look at all the different provinces has a little bit of different wording, and basically what it means is it's never a one-time incident. So it is a variety of very negative behaviors, whether it's rolling your eyes at you or gossiping or rumors or sabotage, or there's a long list of negative tactics that can be used, right? Telling lots of stuff. But if that's directed towards one or a group of people specifically, and it's happening over a period of time, international research says 6 months or more. I say 3 months or more. Now that we're far more aware of what's going on, I would say it's valid to say 3 months or more. If these tactics are happening to you specifically or your group specifically for over 3 months, and it causes you some form of harm, and there's a long list of harm. We've talked about some of that already: anxiety, depression, PTSD, adjustment disorder, gastrointestinal, heart disease. There's all kinds of things this can cause, with or without conscious intent. Some employers are making the mistake of looking for intent. Forget it. It's with or without conscious intent. If you're causing harm, it's a problem, and it's got to stop, right? So there's that's kind of simplifying it as much as I can. It's another way that I explain it is like death by 1,000 cuts, that term. Just change it to psychological injury by 1,000 psychological insults. And it might be for you, Chris, it might have been the 700th cut that finally got you to say, I'm out of here. Or for me and Barb, who are stubborn women, it might have been the 999th cut that finally said, that's it, I whatever, can't do it anymore, and just had to leave to save my life. That kind of breaks it down and simplifies it as much as possible there.
And I'll add to that. I'll just add a little bit more, and I'll say that there is an intersection or intersectionality between discrimination and vulnerable populations, women, people who are from diverse backgrounds. It doesn't mean that they're the only ones who are targeted, but again, there is more vulnerability with those people, and they have a higher percentage of incidents or issues. I always think it's important as well to say, what is psychological safety? What is the opposite of psychological harassment and bullying? And that, at a very simple level, is just being able to speak, be heard and respected, to be able to feel you can speak what's in your mind and do that safely. That's a very basic thing that you should be able to do at work.
Yeah. And that's an important point that you brought up, Barb, about minorities. But I also want people of all cultures, of all types, to understand that you're not being targeted because of any imperfection, that you could be perfect and you would still be bullied. It has nothing to do with a lack of or imperfection in you. Nobody deserves to be abused. It is about something that is going wrong inside the person who is offending you, right? There's something wrong with them, whether they're jealous of you, whether they're insecure, whether they're a psychopath, sociopath, whether they've been trained to be a bully the way they are. There's something in them. So I want people to get that message. It has nothing to do with something with any kind of minority what we're talking about, or even if you were the most perfect person, it doesn't matter. You can still be bullied.
The worst of it, I thought, Linda, that I went through, and Barb as well. It wasn't coming from other employees. I thought the worst of it was coming from upper management, and that even makes it even worse because your hands are kind of tied, and HR is working for the company in that as well. And like I said, nobody deserves to go through that at all. And I sometimes feel that when it comes from the management aspect of it, is they're trying to get you to quit instead of firing you. They want to try to get you to quit the job.
Sometimes that is the intention, Chris, sometimes, but research, we see research varying from 70 to 75%, depending on what country the research is coming from, that the bullying is coming top down. So you're right. Sometimes it's the manager bullying the supervisor, and then the supervisor bullying the front lead, and then the lead bullying the employee. So top down, but that's kind of like giving us a solution, because that's telling us that we're not setting leaders up for success. And we need to review our screening processes and our hiring processes, but we also have to set them up for success, and we have to make them accountable, which means monitoring them too, right? So when I do train leaders, I do ask this question: what's your leadership style? Most people don't know their own leadership style. That to me is a signal of a problem. How do you know that you're effective? Are you aware that people are walking around eggs around you? So we need to start looking at leadership.
Well said. I couldn't put it any better myself on that as well. Do you have anything to follow up with that on, Barb?
I think I've said this earlier. My point is that training and mentoring and real effective training is critical. I think that often it's a tick box training. I did 10 minutes on a video screen. I answered a couple of questions. I was compliant to the governance structure. But if you really want to have meaningful training, you have to teach a skill, and then you have to ensure that there is experiential learning, that the leader gets to try it out, they get to reflect, and they get coaching when they come back to say, hey, this is what I liked about what I did, this is what I would change. Having difficult conversations, being able to confront issues, being able to identify issues, these are all core requirements of leadership. I think there is also a growing need for developing these softer skills, these interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence. So this is where leadership is going, and this is what's required to create culture that is safe.
Well, again, the trauma-informed training, and when you're talking about leadership training, you're absolutely right. It's tick the box, but also our policies are not strong enough, because our legislation says that every employer in Canada should align their policies to the new act. Well, the new act really doesn't. All it says is train them on policies and procedures. There's far more to bullying and harassment and psychological safety than just policies and procedures. This is a human experience, just like domestic violence and sexual assault. And there's the risk of a psychological injury, which I call depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, low confidence. That training needs to be far more than ticking a box. So I agree with you there.
I wanted to also add to Barb and Linda too. I've been in where a company has preached all this stuff, but they never followed through on it. And to me, it's one thing that puts stuff down in writing, but actions speak louder than words. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
Well, we talk a lot about that in our training, Chris, that, just having a great website that says all the wonderful things and then not following through, you're actually telling your employees that you're a hypocrite, that you're not walking your talk, you're not practicing what you preach. And I always tell them, your employees are watching you. They know if you mean what you say. They know if you're committed to their best interest. They know it. And if you're not, you're either letting them down, they don't trust you, they don't feel safe, or they're joining you and behaving the way you are. They're following your lead. Sorry about that, Barb. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to come from a different angle, and it's the angle of accountability and transparency. And there is measures in place for publicly traded companies, and it's the ESG, and I put an A at the end, measures, and it's environment, social, governance, and accessibility. And these measures, the environmental requirements are much more easy to measure. And governance, you can also measure, but the social component tends to be softer. And what you see a lot of organizations doing is creating social awareness and programs and doing good work outside of their organization. I think this trend is changing. I think more and more people are interested in understanding how do we measure social within the workplace culture. And I think holding organizations accountable for transparency on key measures. Now, I'm not sure 100% what those measures should be, but I think how many people reported a bullying issue, how many reported in your organization a discrimination issue, how many people signed NDAs. I'm not sure these are all the measures, but and you know, there's a subtlety here. Like, oh, we have no complaints. No one filed a complaint. How is it documented? So the more accountability, the tougher the legislation is, the more organizations, the measurements become more specific. I think organizations will be forced by external pressures to step it up. I also think the tolerance in our culture, and you know, through the Me Too movements and more employees taking risk and coming forward, is changing culture. Even if leadership doesn't want to make the change, they over time have been pressured into changing their methods. It's not perfect, and there's tons of work to do, as Linda's already expressed, but these techniques require organizations to change.
One thing I wanted to add here as well, I know even when you document things, it's important to make sure you have copies, dates and times, and names for your own records as well. But sometimes documenting stuff doesn't resolve the issue as well. But I would tell anybody, always make sure you have dates and times, and even people to sign witness statements of what you're going through as well.
I'd like to go a little deeper into that, Chris.
Okay.
You know, we don't always carry a paper pen or a computer with us, so I do recommend people keep notes in their phone. They've got a password, so it's safe. Don't put client information in your notes. Keep your notes in one place, because it's hard enough on our brain as we're ruminating about things that are happening. If it's in one place, you're not going to worry about it at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know it's in your book. But you know, when you're documenting, you're documenting for a number of reasons. If one day you decide you're going to complain, you're going to want that note to go back to. You want the clarity of the notes, right? So this is a very fatiguing abuse, and you're going to be very forgetful over a few months. You're going to forget what happened on July 17th. Something might happen that might make it a lot worse, and you're going to want to complain. So you want to be credible for that investigator. You want credibility. Consistency and clarity in your notes is going to give you that credibility. It's also important to document for your mental health. We talked about this earlier, how you start questioning yourself, what you saw, what you felt, what we heard. You can go back to your notes and go, oh yeah, that is what happened. Because I start doubting myself, I go back to my notes. So you want that for clarity, to keep your confidence, to keep your courage, so you can make that complaint one day.
Absolutely, 100%. Barb, do you have anything to add on that?
I just say, like, it goes back to you may not remember everything, and you may not document everything in real time, but other people may know, and there's soft things that happen. There were many times in my experience where people came to me after a meeting and said, "Are you okay?" Or they texted me and said, "Oh my goodness, that was harsh." Those are bits of information that if you just go through your cell phone, you go through your Teams calls, they'll start to come to life for you, and they'll accumulate. And documentation is interesting because we sort of hit a critical point often. This is the tipping point. Oh my God, I can't take it anymore. But if you go back and you revisit some of the things, you'll see the informal conversations. You'll remember things, and over time it accumulates, and that's how you really sort of build your awareness and your information to support your concern.
Again, clarity.
One thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, clarity.
But I've had situations where I've had a case and that HR department didn't deal with it, and other employees see it too. And when something is not dealt with or resolved, it can even make the environment even more toxic going forward. And there was points where I just dreaded going into work, not because of the job itself, but because of the environment there.
Absolutely, that's more common than people realize, actually. And it's like, we've got a lot of people that are crying on the way to work because they don't want to go to work, but they've got to put the food on the table. They got to pay the bills, and then they get, they soldier up through the day, and obviously that's going to make them feel sick 'cause they got knots in their guts or tension in their body, and obviously that's going to impact their immune system. And then they cry it all the way home, but they don't have a choice to quit. Some people will say to them, well, if you don't like it here, quit. But you've got bills to pay. You got kids at home. You need those health benefits. And people just don't realize how multi-layered and complex this really is. And that's another reason why training should be mandatory, especially for first responding professionals, leaders, investigators, HR, etc., because there's just so many more insidious nuances that people are not getting.
Barb, you got anything to add to that?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question, and then we're going to get into your big fundraiser event on October 20th here in Toronto. And I've already got it on the ticker below the screen for you, Linda and Barb, as well.
Great.
Excellent.
You're welcome. I wanted to ask you this question, both of you ladies. How long approximately does it take to change a company's work environment and make the environment safer, not just physically, but psychologically safer for the workers and everybody with that company?
It's going to depend on, every organization, every profession, every industry is different. And how long have they been toxic? And how damaged are they? That's going to make a difference. It could be a quick turnover, or it could take years.
And I would say leadership changes, and leadership brings new initiatives and fresh starts. So depending on the leadership and the philosophy and their education and their priorities, those are the levers that make a difference. The other thing that makes a difference is talent leaves. They may not be able to call out this culture is a problem. It's not good work here, but you will see a steady stream of people leaving. They may not tell you why, but once they cross the line and they leave, there's a group of people that will embrace them likely and say, me too. I was there. I made the same decision. So you'll see talent being lost if you don't change.
Talent being lost to either transferring out, resigning, or going on sick leave. That's a trend as well, if you want to pay attention to it. But when we go back to what would it take and how long would it take, if you've got to make sure your leadership is a cohesive team. If you're saying it's zero tolerance, make sure every leader is on board with you, because one or two weak links is going to ruin every dollar you've spent trying to clean up or make it psychologically safe. So make sure we're talking about a cohesive leadership team here with full commitment, and it's consistent.
I would also, this is the part that I really want to highlight with you, Linda, and that is consistency approach. Regardless of your role in the organization, the consequences are the same, and the policy will be followed. A policy usually has many layers. It's 1, 2, 3. You first start with your manager, you go to HR, and you first start with the person directly, and then you go to your manager, and then you go to HR. Sometimes you can't use all of those steps given the situation. But if it becomes so difficult and you have to go into, resolving it through, other means, legal means, which is, really a very terrible, aggressive action. No one wants that. No organization wants that. No individual wants that. So, you get to change organizations, as Linda said, by acting fast, but acting consistently and making sure it's a safe culture to get help. I really can't say this enough. Get an independent complaint process, an escalation process, and seek expert advice on your action plans. There is no legal obligation or no legislation right now that says an organization has to do anything. They don't have to once they find there's a problem, they don't actually have to make a change. That is a problem. And that's where organizations they have the accountability if they want to change their culture to have an independent process and independent advice on action.
One thing I wanted to add to you, ladies, as well, is I found myself and many others that are in looking for new career jobs and stuff like that. As much as I want a high paying job, the money aspect is important, and doing what you like is great as well. I want to make sure the next company I'm in, the work environment is good, because there's nothing worse than a toxic work environment. And that's the biggest part of a job right there. It's not necessarily the job itself, it's the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's two parts I'd like to say to that. First of all, you've got more awareness of what workplace bullying, psychological harassment is. You've got more awareness of the signs. You've got more awareness of the early warning signs and the indicators and the risk factors. So even in an interview, you could probably ask a few more questions that you wouldn't normally ask about how do you guys deal with it. That doesn't guarantee they actually do. The most of the change is going to come from you. You know, that you've healed some of those wounds and you've healed some of those buttons that people can change, and you've looked over their policies. But I mean, you've got more legislation today than you probably had when you were in that job years ago, and it's going to get better as time goes on. So we do have more resources, whereas when I started this, there was nothing in Canada. So things are a lot better now than they ever were, and that's just going to continue to get better.
One thing, Linda, I wanted to ask you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Barb.
Oh, no, I'm good.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Linda, is your company focuses on Canada. Is your company focused internationally too, or is it just strictly in Canada?
It is a Canadian company, but I have been working with people in the UK and the USA and different parts of the world since I started, because, you know, like we mentioned in the very beginning, this is not a small issue. This is an epidemic in the workplace. It's happening everywhere. And so I have had people call from all different parts. But I started a workplace bullying awareness week every October. There's a full week of events for 10 years now. In the last 4 or 5 years, I've invited other countries. We have 16 countries joining us. So every October during that week, 16 countries so far, hopefully more this year, are going to do Workplace Bullying Awareness Week. And I think that's really shifted this movement even further, in line with Me Too and in line with legislation and everything else.
Would you like to add something, Barb?
Well, I think it would be a good time to start talking about our fundraiser. I hope that's okay, Chris. Do you want to?
Yeah, actually,
shift a bit.
Yep, that's our that's our next question. Can you tell us, both Barb and Linda, about your fundraiser on Friday, October 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern? I believe it's 461 King Street West in Toronto. It's cocktails, networking, silent auction, dancing. And also, how did this event come about, and how much work was it into planning this event?
Take it away, Barb.
I don't know. There's a lot there. So I'll start, and, Linda, you'll add. So as I said, I had a workplace issue, and it was quite significant, and it took me a lot of work. And thank goodness I was able to resolve it. My organization and I worked hard, and we resolved it. It was not an easy journey. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my career. And when I resolved it, I look back and I said, I was able to do this partly because I got educated. I was naive. I was certainly, even as a clinician, I didn't really understand what had been happening to me psychologically. And I really needed to navigate and learn very quickly. And I relied on Linda's sites and her presentations and her information. She had no idea who I was. I called her after I resolved my issues, and I said, I've been stalking you. I think that was my opening line. I'm a committed fan and a stalker. It is without your help, I would have never been able to navigate and learn what was happening to me and how to resolve it. And I am so grateful. I'm a person who had a successful career. I love my job. I worked in the same industry for 28 years, and it was hard for me. I was someone at the later stages. I'm at the end of my career, not finished. People have been telling me I'm retired. There's no way I'm retiring yet. I've got lots to do. So I was privileged. I had the resources. I was a counselor. I had skill and insight. I was confident. at some level, I could speak up and say, this is not okay. And I was learning, and I had, support through Linda. So I called her up and I said, you don't know me, I know you. I want to pay forward this experience, because if I had a difficult time, and if I was dragged down so low and suffered as much as I did, I can't imagine how the rest of the, other people who don't have my resources, skills, and insight and could have managed. And I said to her, I know your organization, I'm aware of it, and I want to pay for it, and I want to do a fundraiser. And Linda said, okay, let's do it. I think that's my story, really. I think that's our story, Linda. And, we actually started working on that very day and started to immediately think, okay, how do we do this? And the goal really is to provide quality information and to help people navigate. And the tools that people commonly need are good counseling and sometimes legal support. And you don't want to use your lawyer as your counselor and vice versa. So really getting people who have very little resources enough of the right information to lift them up. That is sort of at a very high level what we're aiming towards. And now I'll pass it to you, Linda, and you'll add to it.
The reason that we feel this is such an important event is that I've seen thousands in my private practice, because I specialize in treating this injury, and I train therapists to treat this injury as well, because a lot of therapists potentially could make mistakes and cause more harm. And people are out there fighting to stand up for themselves, to speak up for themselves. And sometimes they exhaust every penny of their savings. Some people have actually lost their homes just trying to stand up for themselves. And that's another injustice. And there's nowhere for them to tap into getting some funds. They don't have their insurance benefits anymore, or whatever the case may be. And so we wanted to put a fund together to help those people. They might need a few more sessions in therapy just to give them the courage to keep going, or to make that decision whether they're going to do it or not, make a complaint. They might need a legal consult or a letter from a lawyer, but they can't afford it. So we want to raise funds to help people. This could be, for those who are listening, this could be your daughter, this could be your wife, this could be your mother, your father, your brother, your son that is going through this someday. We want to make it safe for them now and in the future. And so this event is our first kickoff. It's going to help us fund a toolkit for injured workers, and also put some money aside if somebody needs to see. So we'll have an application process they'll have to qualify for. Next year, we'll do another fundraiser. I'm hoping it's going to be a conference, to build awareness next year. But we'll keep coming up with some good ideas so that we can get some funding to get some help. We'll apply for grants, we'll apply for a GoFundMe, but we hope people will make donations and attend.
What do you have a goal right now? What you guys would like to do, or is it too soon yet to talk about a goal for this fundraiser?
The more, the better.
Absolutely. How can my audience that are watching this or listening contact you guys for tickets, or what's the best place online to purchase a ticket for this event on October 20th?
Well, you've got my website there, and we can send you our poster, Chris, if you want to put that up, because that's got all the information on it. It's got the email address where people can email for tickets. There's my email that's going across the board there. I can see that being put out. Barb, do you have that email address for Kelly available?
I don't, but I think if you just go into our social media, you'll see the materials. I think, Chris, you're gonna circulate it. It's certainly on the website for the organization, the Canadian Institute for Workplace Violence and Harassment and Bullying. Yeah. So what I just want to really underscore this, and I think, Linda, you've said this, and Chris, you've said this, but we're looking for corporate sponsors. We're looking for organizations that really want to put their name in front of this issue and say, we want to do better, or we want to ensure our employees get the help they need, or other organizations get the help they need. So sponsorships of all industries, all organizations, We want individuals to come and have fun. And if you're not able to attend in person, we really welcome your donation. So like the sponsorships is great, but all donations are really appreciated.
Yeah. And we do give credit for that. You know, you get your logo put up on a big sign, and we do let people know that you are sponsoring, promoting psychological safety.
Any chance this event could be live streamed as well? Possibly?
Yeah, you can, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and
well, I believe portions of it for sure. I think portions of it could for sure. I think, you know, there's lots of parts of it. Like, you know, no one wants to watch us dance and have a party where you can't physically attend, but there's some creativity there. So Chris, we're open to these ideas.
Yeah, we are going to be announcing some awards, for example. We are going to be doing a little bit of a speech in the beginning and announcing an award for we did a survey with another company about the best employer out there for promoting psychological safety. So we are going to announce that, things like that for sure. People can also buy tickets and attend virtually. Remember that part. So if anybody can't get to Ontario, but they still want to see how it's going, we hope to be able to let you see that virtually.
How many tickets are available what's the occupation or the availability for this event if you want to buy a ticket?
Well, the venue comfortably holds probably about 300 people, and we have an overflow room that we have reserved. So we have lots of capacity. We have lots of capacity. And it is at the last day of the Bully Awareness Week. So it's really a celebration, a less formal celebration. So we put, you know, the fun in fundraiser, but we really want people to network. We want to celebrate people's, you know, what they contribute, and just, you know, the power of the voice of just saying, we're going to do this better.
And we're even going to have ping pong tables. So I challenge anybody to a game.
Sounds good. Is this possibly going to be a yearly event then?
I hope that's so. A nice idea, Chris. Thanks for suggesting that.
Yeah, it's our first, and I think with everything you do for the first time, you need to evaluate it. But it is our hope and our passion that we continue down the road of doing some really fantastic fundraising. And if our party's successful, then why wouldn't we do it again? And we believe we'll be very successful. I do want to acknowledge that we've had a lot of good response early on. We've had a lot of people who are buying tickets, and we've had some really excellent corporate sponsorship. So I do want to say we've started out of the gate really strong. But more and more is welcome.
Oh, we need more.
Did you want to mention did you want to do a shout out to your current corporate sponsors for this event so far on here?
I think we'd like, I don't know what you think, Linda. I'll leave it to you. We've got a couple.
I think I will leave it to you, Mark, because you've been bringing them two on. So those two especially.
What I would say is we have an organization called Upstream Counseling in the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo area who came on as one of our formal sponsors. We have we have People Corp, who really believes in psychological safety and really wanted to step forward and formally offer us support. So those are two of our most recent corporate sponsors. We have a couple more, but we're going to start sharing that more in our social media campaign on LinkedIn. But those are two that really have helped lift us up. And we're excited about their support. It's been greatly appreciated.
Okay, before we wrap this show up, is there anything else you would like to add for this event? And do I have permission to just play a 3 or 4 minute video clip of your podcast show as well? And Linda, would you like to plug your podcast show as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You have my permission. And my podcast is called On the Record, Stories of Survival and Thriving After Workplace Bullying. It's on my website, the Canadian Institute of Workplace Bullying Resources. And what I really wanted to highlight was try and get every profession up there that has experienced bullying. So we have HR, we have military, we have police, we have female officers, we have nurses, teachers, lawyers, HR, social workers. We have an Indigenous counselor. We have all kinds up there. It's not just the voices of people that have been through it. You're going to get to see their faces, what they went through, how they survived it, and what they're doing now. So you're going to learn about resources all around Canada. And that, I hope, is going to give people hope that they're not going to take the blame of this. They're not going to take this on. They're going to get past that self-blame and self-doubt and start speaking up and getting loud like we are.
And it's on all the platforms like Spotify and Apple and all that as well. Is there a day and a time that you normally record an episode?
They're all up on my website. That's the easiest way for people to find it. And
Okay.
just look at On the Record on the website, and you'll find them all there.
Okay. And the episode I was going to play is from the whistleblower episode as well. So I'm just going to play about a 4-minute clip, and then we'll wrap up this show. But again, I want to say, Barbara, thank you, and Linda, thank you so much for coming on here tonight. And I think this was a great topic subject to speak about as well. Sometimes I talk too fast, so I'm still a work in progress doing this show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Just give me 1 second and we'll have this clip played. Let me know if you can hear it okay.
It's a little low. Welcome to the 5th episode of On the Record, the Whistleblower.
Okay, guys, I apologize.
Joangel Conception and I are very proud and honored to have our 3 guests speak.
It looks like a Wi-Fi issue. Sometimes the videos play no problem on here, but I don't know why tonight the Wi-Fi is freezing. I was just hoping to play a 4 or 5 minute clip from your episode. This one was the whistleblower, so we'll just give it another minute, and if it doesn't work, maybe I'll have you back on again in the future as a guest, Linda, and we'll be able to play a video clip.
Okay. Will it help if I sign out with your bandwidth?
Yeah, I'm gonna just try it again and see if we can get going.
Experiences of being whistleblowers.
And unfortunately, we lost Barb too, so I might just have to scrap the video. Unfortunately,
Speaking about areas that they are passionate about.
Okay, yeah, it's not gonna comply with this tonight, so. As well. So again, I apologize for the technical glitch, and hopefully we'll get them back as well. Again, I want to say thank you to Linda and Barbara for coming on here as well. And yeah, sometimes things happen that are out of your control. So again, thank you all for coming on to season 6, episode 27 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles as well. And speaking of Barry Cullen Chevrolet, Summer Adventures event at Barry Cullen Chevrolet 2023 Equinox and Blazer RS are available at 4.49% financing for up to 60 months as well. And I want to say thank you to Barry Cullen Chevrolet for sponsoring Live with CDP Sports Talk as well. As for the event with Linda and Barb for the Canadian Institute of Workplace Bullying Resources, the event is their fundraiser event again is on Friday, October 20th at 7 p.m. at 461 King Street West in Toronto. Cocktails, networking, silent auction, dancing, will be available for this fundraiser for the Canadian Institute of Workplace Bullying Resources, put on by Linda Crockett and also Barb Vetter as well. And again, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I apologize for losing my guests on here. I was having an issue with my YouTube video I wanted to show of Linda's podcast. And unfortunately, when I clicked that off, it kicked me off of this episode as well. So, things do happen and it's out of our control. So I'm hoping to have Linda and Barbara back on my show again. Again, you can contact Linda Crockett at 780-965-7480, or you can email Barbara. You can email Linda. Again, you can call her at 780-965-7480, or you can email Linda at psychologicalsafetyfirst@gmail.com as well. And also another website you guys can check out as well is workplaceharassment.ca as well. Also, guys, you can, her website is Linda's website again is Institute of Workplace Bullying Resources.ca. So please check out her website as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is a weekly sports and entertainment talk show hosted by Chris Palme. Is now on weeknights at 8 p.m. on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. Our website for the radio station is WQEE-FM. That's WQEE-FM.radio12345.com as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn as well. You can also check out my website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Again, check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles as well. You can also follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. I post a lot of content there at Live with CDP on TikTok as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting such as myself, check out StreamYard.com as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk, the audio version is available on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify for podcasters, Castbox, LinkedIn, Stitcher, and Tuned In, and also on WQEE 99.1 FM. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my Spotify channel as well. You can also email or text Live with CDP Sports Talk at cpalme19@gmail.com, or you can text the show at 519-820-7188. Any comments, questions, or suggestions for future shows would be greatly appreciated as well. You can also follow me on all these platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel as well. One second, guys. And again, just want to also let you guys know the Argo Bounce live audio show is tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern with co-hosts Nick Small and yours truly, Chris Palme, as we break down the Argos' win over the Montreal Alouettes to go to 4-0 for the first time since 1983. And we'll preview the Argos' upcoming game this Friday night, July 21st, 7:30 versus those Hamilton Tiger Cats. And also we're going to talk some CFL football tonight too. So I hope you guys can all turn into the Argo Bounce live audio show on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and then on my audio platforms. And the show will be available on WQEE 99.1 FM in Metro Atlanta as well. Again, I want to apologize for the technical difficulties at the end of the show. I was trying to play a video of Linda's podcast, and unfortunately it froze. And when I cleared it off, I ended up losing Linda and Barb as well. So again, I want to say thank you to Linda Crockett and Barb Vetter for coming on here. And Linda is the founder of the Canadian Institute of Workplace Bullying Resources, which she started up in Edmonton, Alberta in 2011 as well. The next Live with CDP Sports Talk, Season 6, Episode 28, will be this Thursday, July 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern with singer, songwriter, actress, recording artist, Chesney Claire. So I hope you guys can tune in for that. Chesney Claire, she's also a 4-time award-winning songwriter as well. She's based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. So I'm hoping you guys can tune into Season 6, Episode 28 this Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, with musician, singer, songwriter Chesney Claire, who was named after the legendary Kenny Chesney as well. So that's about it, guys. Again, I want to say thank you to Linda Crockett and Barb Vetter for coming on Live with CDP Sports Talk tonight. And again, I do apologize for the technical difficulties at the end of the show with the video of Linda's work and podcast show that didn't work. And also, unfortunately, it kicked both Linda and Barbara out of my podcast show as well. I'm hoping to have them both on as guests again in the future. So I hope everybody has a great evening, and I hope some of you can come back at 9 o'clock tonight for the Argo Bounce live audio show with Nick Small and myself talking Toronto Argonauts and some CFL football. Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you everyone for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk, episode number 302 today. And we'll see you for the next episode Thursday night at 9 o'clock with Chesney Claire from Las Vegas, Nevada, a singer-songwriter. Have a great evening, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.